Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Theme Park Center. Today I'm really excited because we're going to be doing a run-through of everything HHN, specifically Orlando, not the Hollywood one, but specifically Orlando's Halloween Horror Nights 29. Unfortunately, I have to be doing the show by myself because Trisha, who normally joins us on the show, is over at D23 right now. In fact, as I'm recording this, she's actually at the parks panel that they're doing at D23, so she's hearing all of the really cool announcements up front right now, live, while I'm here recording this. But as soon as she gets back, we'll try to get a podcast out as fast as we can, because we'll be talking about all the stuff that she heard. They did some amazing announcements at the Disney Plus panel. I know we're a podcast about theme parks, but a lot of these properties tie into the theme park, so I think it's worth talking a little bit about that. So we'll be talking about that panel, the Disney Studios panel, and of course, obviously, the parks panel that is happening right now as I'm speaking to you. So in this episode, we're not going to be talking about any of that, so I'm sorry if that's what you're looking for, but tune in just a few days, because trust me, we got you. We'll be talking about it, and we're going in depth with someone who's actually there in person. So that's exciting. That's something to be looking forward to. But today, we are talking all things Halloween Horror Nights, and I have been so excited for this episode for so long now. I've been wanting to do this, I don't even know how long now, but we have all the announcements. We have pretty much all the information that we're going to get from Halloween Horror Nights. Now the next thing is actually going to the event, and that is arguably the most exciting part. I know there's a lot of hype around the announcements and everything, but I don't know. I'm the HHN purist. I love Halloween Horror Nights, and nothing beats the experience of just being there. I'm really excited for this year. For a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is because Trisha has never gone, and I am dragging her with me. I don't know how excited she is or how terrified she is, but either way, she is going this year. It's going to happen. And one of the things that I've been telling her is that it's not just scary Universal. Like, the park completely transforms. And when you walk in, it doesn't matter how many times you've been to Universal Studios. When you walk in, it is a brand new theme park. It feels so completely different. The atmosphere is like, it's tangible, it's exciting, it's electric. And even if you're not into being scared, quote unquote, being scared, it's still just so much fun because there's a vibe about the place. Like, you really feel the passion and the excitement from everyone else around you. And there's a reason why Halloween Horror Nights has almost become its own season in people's lives. Like, it's not fall anymore. It's HHN season. But enough preamble. Let's just go ahead and dive into it. So the way that I want to kind of frame this episode, and I don't know how long this episode is going to be. I mean, obviously you do. You're looking at it right now. But I'm just kind of throwing this at the wall, and hopefully I have something long enough to put together. But I just want to go through a rundown of literally every single house, every single scare zone, and the exciting thing, every single show. There's more than one this year. That they have announced and that is going to be there. So let's go ahead and get started and do that. But after all that, I want to go in order from what I'm looking forward to. And I want to preface this up front. I'm going to say least, but I want to say right now, there is not a single house or scare zone or show that I'm not looking forward to. I'm looking forward to every single one, and I'm excited about every single one. But if you are ranking them, obviously something has to come last. So it's not that these are the houses that I'm looking forward to, like I'm not looking forward to these and I am looking forward to these. It's not like that. Not like that at all. I'm looking forward to every single thing at this event this year. But I do want to go from a least excited to most excited, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get there. But let's just go ahead and start with a rundown of every single thing that's going to be there. First off, everyone's excited for it. This is kind of the house that is really going to be selling tickets this year. It was there last year, and they announced it again this year, and that is Stranger Things. Go ahead, applaud, scream, cheer, woo, Stranger Things. The house was amazing last year. People had their own opinions about it, saying that it was their favorite, one of their least favorite, just because of the scariness level. But everyone said one thing walking out of that house. Wow, that was immersive. Beautifully themed. One of the best houses they've ever put out for design. There were a lot of different opinions on, if the house was a good scare house or not. I could do a whole podcast on that house, honestly, because it was a mixed bag. It was a lot of fun, one of the best houses they've put together, but at the same time, wasn't very scary. So everyone was, excited, I think is an understatement when they said that they're bringing back Stranger Things. But not only are they bringing back Stranger Things, they're also doing season 2 and 3, which just came out, which is kind of shocking because last year they only did season 1. So that makes me wonder a few things. One, are they trying to do season 2 and 3 this year because they know next year they're not going to have it? Or are they just so amped on Stranger Things that they want to fit as much in as possible and kind of bank on the success of season 3? It would be interesting to see if it returns next year or not. I personally think that it will. They have a track record, like you can talk about, The Walking Dead, for example, or The Purge, for example, that when it's successful one year, they're going to bring it back and do it multiple years and most likely run it into the ground. Everyone loved The Walking Dead. The first, 35 years that they did it, in reality, I think they did it 5 or 6 years. But the first few years that they did it, people loved The Walking Dead. There was one year that it was so popular, it was 2013, that literally the entire park was Walking Dead. Like, all of the scare zones were Walking Dead, and the main house that year was Walking Dead. And that year was actually fantastic. But after that year, it was kind of like, okay, come on, guys. And then the last year was like, not Stranger Things, The Walking Dead again. And I hope they don't do that with Stranger Things. But I think it's definitely a possibility. But we'll see how it goes. Last year was one of the best houses they've ever done. And I think this year is probably not going to be an exception to that. I think they're going to step up their game even more. But that's just one house. We have 9 more to go. Which, by the way, I think it's interesting to note. And I think there's a lot of people that are making assumptions on the quality of this year based off of this fact alone. It's interesting. They're doing 10 houses this year. 6 of them are IPs, meaning intellectual property, meaning it's based on something that people already know, such as Stranger Things. And there's only 4 original houses, which is surprising because Halloween Horror Nights really got its foundation off of the original content. That's kind of the thing that they built their success on, and it's the thing that the true diehard fans really love, is the creativity that they have in their original houses. And over the last, I don't even know, 5 to 10 years, I think 10 might be a little too far back, but definitely in that 5 to 10 year range, they've really been diving into the IP side of things. But they've been keeping it fairly well balanced. Every year, it's about 50-50. Like last year, 10 houses, 5 original, 5 IP. But this year, as far as I know, this is the first year that the IP has actually outweighed the original in terms of the houses. And I don't want to make any assumptions or judgments based off of that, because I think all the IPs that they have here are fantastic. But people have definitely been making assumptions on quality, or not necessarily quality, but how good they think the event is going to be, how much of that nostalgia, quote unquote nostalgia. I keep on doing these air quotes, but it's a podcast, you can't really see me. But people keep on talking about the nostalgia factor, and if they're going to be, I don't know, too mainstream, I don't know, question mark, I don't know if that's the right word, or like if they're getting rid of their originals for the IP, and what is that going to do to the event? I'm definitely curious to see this year. I feel like the IP has been so well chosen for this year that I don't really think people are going to miss the originals. And I'm not saying like miss it in terms of they're gone, but every year, for me at least, my favorite house is always an original house. And I don't know why that is. I think that's because that's where they put all their creativity into, but I'm not sure why those are my favorite houses every year. It just happens to be that way. But this year, I don't know. Some of these IPs are fantastic. And some of the originals sound really cool too, but let's move on. Let's keep on going down these houses. I'm going to list them off all as IP first, and then we'll get into some of the originals. The next one is Ghostbusters. This one, so many people are looking forward to this one. Personally, I think this is going to be in the same category as Stranger Things. Not very scary, but one of the best themed houses they've ever built. I have a ton of friends that are in this house. Well, I have a lot of friends that are scare actors in all these houses, because I was a scare actor the last 2 years, and before that, I worked the event, not as a scare actor, but I worked the event for, ever since 2013. So I have a lot of friends that do this event. And I have some friends that are in the Ghostbusters house, and they said firsthand, you are going to be amazed at some of the visual effects that they have in this house. So I am so freaking excited for this house for that reason alone. And the fact of the nostalgia that it's in Soundstage 22, which is right next to where the Ghostbusters show was, or, like just the fact that it's in that area, nostalgia for all the hardcore, purist Universal fans. It's like, I'm not going to say it's going to make me cry, but like, I'm just so excited. Next one, I'm just going to try to knock these out. I know I kind of expanded a lot on just that first one. Next one, Us. If you listen to the podcast, I think it was 2 episodes ago. Oh my gosh, I am so excited for this house, because this movie, even though it didn't blow me away in terms of redefining the genre of horror, I actually didn't think it was that much horror. I thought it was more thriller. But as I was watching this movie, and I really did like this movie a lot. As I was watching this movie, the whole movie to me felt like a Halloween Horror Nights house. Like, between the costumes and the sets and just everything, I was watching it like they made this house, or they made this movie for a house, didn't they? Like, it just had that vibe. I'm really excited for the Room of Mirrors. That's going to be cool. I'm really excited for seeing where the Tethered live. I think that's going to be an amazing climax to this house. And I am also really excited for the scene at the boathouse or the lake house or whatever. That's going to be, it's just going to be such a cinematic house. And I think it's going to balance scariness and theming very well. I think there are a few houses in this lineup that are going to be one or the other, and I think this one's going to balance it very well. So this is definitely one of my most anticipated. Spoiler alert, we're going to get to that. Next house, Killer Clowns. Was anyone really surprised? If you follow Halloween Horror Nights stuff, you know Michael Aiello, one of the main guys behind Halloween Horror Nights, is a huge fan of this property, and he's been trying to get this property into the parks for forever. And he finally did it last year, but as a scare zone, and the scare zone overperformed. It wasn't too scary because you had huge clowns, though, like you can't miss them. They were ginormous and standing outside. So they didn't really scare you too much because, you just saw them coming. But they were freaking creepy, man. And because the suits were so well designed, and the fact that these characters were out there, a lot of people had so much fun just hanging out in that scare zone and being able to take pictures and just interact with these characters. And I'm really excited to see what these guys can put into a property that they love into a house. It's really hard to theme a scare zone super well since it is outside. And you have to deal with normal day operations for a theme park, during the morning and early afternoon. So you have to be really flexible with taking down select theming and then putting it up. So being able to have an actual house with these characters that they love, I'm really excited to see what they do. The next one, House of 1,000 Corpses. I'll be honest, don't hate me. I know this is a cult classic. It's not one of my favorite movies. I just rewatched it, and it's definitely a unique kind of movie. It has one of those, what am I watching type of, it's one of those movies, which is great, but it definitely has that like cult feel to it. So if you're into those movies, you'll probably love this one. It just, for some reason, wasn't quite my cup of tea. So I'm interested to see what they do with it. It is a Rob Zombie movie, which is interesting because we're going to get to it later, but Rob Zombie has a scare zone this year. So again, we'll talk about that. The next house on our list is one that I'm actually really excited for. Sorry, spoilers for all the favorites that are coming up. But Universal Monsters. I think this property has a lot more weight behind it than just that they want to do a Universal Monsters house. So, of course, Universal announced that they're doing Universal's Epic Universe. It's the brand new theme park that they're building. It's not even a theme park. It's like a full resort that they're building just a few miles away from Universal Orlando Resort right now. And in there, one of the worlds that is rumored to be in there, I say rumored, but it is very strong, incredible rumor, is Universal Monsters. But it's also been a rumor that if there was one thing to go out of the plans, it would be that land first. So I'm not saying that whole land hinges on this house, but I think this house is probably one of the, feelers for that land. They're kind of testing the waters, and I'm sure they're testing the waters in a ton of different ways. They just put out that Universal Monsters store in the Hollywood section of the park, over by T2. It's actually where that gift shop used to be, and then they have this haunted house now. Just saying, coincidence? I'm not too sure if it is or not. Either way, I'm really excited that to be able to see these classic monsters still having a vital role to play at the Universal resorts. These are the characters that Universal as a whole, like the whole motion picture studio that these parks are founded from, the Universal monsters are the characters that they really built this empire on. So it's really great to see them still honoring these characters. So I'm excited for that one. But let's talk about the 4 original houses. So that's the 6 IPs. Again, we've got Stranger Things, Ghostbusters, Us, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, House of 1,000 Corpses, and Universal Monsters, which I know you guys can argue that, well, it's Universal and Universal Monsters. Is it really an IP? Is it original? Who knows? I mean, it was original back in like the 20s, maybe earlier than that. I don't know. But so it's like 100 years old property. I'm going to say it's IP. I'm putting it in the IP. Anyways, let's talk about the originals. So the first one that was announced is Nightingale's Blood Pit. It's supposed to be like a Roman centurion kind of vibe. Apparently, it's a sequel to a different Nightingale's house that they did. But geez, I don't know what year that was. And I'll be honest, I don't know if I remember that house or not. I actually haven't looked into that too much. But that was the first original house that was announced. People are really excited for it. And I think the great thing about the original houses is that there's so much room for them to do whatever they want. And that's why I was saying the original houses are usually the ones that I walk out of as number one, as my favorite, is because they are able to put so much creativity into these houses, especially in today's era where theme parks have to have an IP attached to a ride. Like you never get rides anymore that are just its own contained story. It always has to be a Star Wars land or I don't know, like Indiana Jones or Fast and Furious or Harry Potter. There can't be something original to theme parks anymore. And I think Halloween Horror Nights is one of the last things in theme parks right now that is able to do, when I say theme parks, I mean like the name brand big theme parks. I think it's one of the last things that theme parks have right now that are able to be original. So much creativity and love and passion gets poured into these houses, and they are just some of the best out there. Last year, controversial opinion, but Carnival Graveyard was my number one favorite house. Just because I had the most good to phenomenal, exceptional experiences in that house. Because of the way it was spread out, you could pretty much see everything. So all the scare actors could see you coming, and that gave you some really good opportunities to interact with the scare actors in that house. And because they were, carnival clown kind of things, they were able to have fun with their role a little bit, opposed to just the standard scares. A lot of them were able to improvise because it is an original house and you don't have to stick to an IP. I don't know. That's talking about last year, though. Today we're talking about this year. So I'm excited for some of these, or all of these original houses. Some more than others, though. The next one is Depths of Fear. I'm excited for this house just because it's going to be interesting to see Universal's take on underwater. I know they've done it in the past, but Universal seems to really be stepping up their illusion effects lately. So I'm really excited to see what they can do with technology in this house. The next one is Yeti, Terror of the Yukon. You can thank one of last year's houses for this, Slaughter Cinema. There was a section in the Slaughter Cinema house that had the Yeti, and that section of the house was so well received that they essentially took it out and said, okay, we're making a whole house on this, which is amazing. It was definitely one of the best sections of that house. But what I thought was really interesting about that house last year was it was, a culmination of so many ideas that these guys had for, 10 years. All these ideas that they loved that almost made it, but didn't quite make it. So they took a bunch of these concepts that they had and threw them all together in one house. And this year, we're getting one of those ideas finally brought to life because it was so well received last year. So I'm excited to really see what they can do in this house, especially with I'm assuming that it's going to be cold and there's going to be snow effects. We'll just have to wait and see. But I'm really excited to see what they, again, just like Depths of Fear, what they can do with illusions and the technology inside of these houses. And the last IP house, not IP, original house, is Graveyard Games. It was also, I believe, it was the last house to be announced. No, House of 1,000 Corpses was the last to be announced. But Graveyard Games was the last original house to be announced. And it sounds interesting. It's basically, if, of course, correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a little bit since I read the synopsis of this house. But it seems as if it's about the story of like two teenage kids that are playing pretty much like hide and seek almost in a graveyard and end up stumbling upon some spirits and awakening them. And now they and you realize that, oh crap, there's no getting out of this. Which is cool. I think it's really hard to do ghosts and spirits inside of a house because how do you do that? The invisible, quote unquote, like invisible ghost effects and everything. Like ghosts, you usually can't see them unless they're like super cartoony, like, put the bed sheet over someone, that kind of thing. So it's going to be interesting to see, do they take it more of the zombie route of like the people physically coming out of the graves, or are they going to find a way to do a really interesting adaptation to like a ghost kind of thing? I'm excited to see what they do with that one as well. That's the rundown of all the houses, though. We're going to fly through the scare zones because honestly, there's not too much to them. They are scare zones, and don't get me wrong, I love my scare zones. They're some of the best parts of Halloween Horror Nights, but we're just going to run through them super quick. First off, we got Zombieland Double Tapped. I don't think I know a single person that wasn't excited for this when it was announced. The first movie, so good. It takes place in a theme park. Come on, guys. Like, it's synergy. And they finally made it work. I'm excited. Excited to see it. I'm excited for the second movie. And I'm excited for the scare zone. I've said excited too many times. I just can't contain myself. Halloween Horror Nights is like a few weeks away. Not even. I'm so excited. It starts on September 6th, by the way. But employee preview September 4th. I'm not bragging or anything, but I'll be there September 4th. So pumped. But yeah, Zombieland Double Tap, that's in the New York section of the park. So freaking excited. Rob Zombie has a scare zone. It is Hellbilly Deluxe. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. Like it's a hillbilly, but like Hellbilly. Kind of funny. The synopsis, his music, now it's time to live it. Step into the heavy metal horror of Rob Zombie's music and imagery in this pulse-pounding scare zone. From otherworldly beings to brutal maniacs, you come face to face with his twisted creations as the music cranks to a frenzy. I'll be honest, I'm not a huge Rob Zombie fan in terms of music or movies. He's very artistic, and his art hits people in one way or the other, and honestly, it just kind of misses me. So, Universal has, in the past had very good success with working with people of this nature, such as Alice Cooper, which I believe was 2012, if I'm not wrong. Could be 2011, but I believe it was 2012. The last time we had like a Alice Cooper collab. But they've had great success with this sort of stuff in the past. So I not for a second am doubting Universal. I think they're going to pull off something fantastic, even for people like myself who are not huge Rob Zombie fans, but are fans of horror. And I do enjoy some metal. I enjoy a ton of different styles of music, but unfortunately, I just never was able to really sink my teeth into Rob Zombie's music. The next one is An Arcade. Plaza of the Stars is where this one is taking place. It's an 80s inspired arcade, and it's taken over Avenue of the Stars. At first glance, you may think it's a party. However, you quickly learn that game over means a permanent end for you. A gang of neon slashers are out to play, and this is one game you won't want to lose. I've actually heard some mixed excitement for this. Some people put it super high, some people put it really low. I think it's going to be so interesting to see these streets transformed into an arcade. Historically, this is the one scare zone in Plaza of the Stars. Plaza of the Stars is the one scare zone that always has some trouble because it's right in between. So it's pretty much the main street. It's right in between Despicable Me and Shrek. There's not a whole lot of room to work with. It's a big, wide open street, and there's not much you can do about that. So everything's pretty much, wide open and bare, and it's hard to really set an atmosphere to this one. But I think if they're able to really put out an arcade throughout this street and make it feel like a old 80s arcade, I think that really might do the trick. I think this might be the best scare zone we've ever seen in this area of the park. Next one, Vanity Ball. This one's taking place in Hollywood. Beauty is pain, literally. In the streets of Hollywood, your flesh becomes the canvas as blade-wielding artists slice up willing patients into horrific, living works of art. Here, going under the knife takes a whole new meaning. This one's going to be really interesting, mainly for the makeup. I'm excited to see this one just for the makeup artists behind it. I can speak from experience. Universal has some of the best and most talented makeup artists out there. They're lovely people. They're super nice, and they're insanely talented. Every time that I got the chance to work with them during my scare acting career, it was just a complete honor to be in their chair, being able to wear their art and scare the crap out of fools. It was amazing. It's going to be really fantastic to see them kind of just let loose and be creative with some of the makeup art in this scare zone. That is specifically what I'm really looking forward to in this zone. I don't think it's going to be my favorite. I think Hollywood is also another one of those areas that it's really hard to transform. That's where Chucky was last year, and although Chucky had some fantastic performances in it, it just wasn't quite my favorite. For some reason, it was lacking a little bit of, I don't know, just that Halloween Horror Nights mojo. For me personally, I know Chucky was almost everyone's favorite scare zone last year. Everyone thought it was fantastic. But this sort of thing is subjective, I guess. It just didn't quite hit me the way that some of the other scare zones hit me. It was the one that I was the most familiar with, though, last year, because last year when I was in Blumhouse last year. Blumhouse. I'm pretty sure I'm the only person that's woo for that one. But nonetheless, it was a fun house, okay, guys? Stop it. Stop your laughing. It was a fun house, okay? I'm going to support it because I was in it. But anyways, to get to that house, I had to walk through Chucky at the beginning of the night and at the end of the night. So that was the one that I was the most familiar with because I walked through it every single night. A lot of fun, a lot of great performances from the scare actors, and the scare actors put everything into their roles, and it was great for that reason. But I think Hollywood traditionally has been very hard to create a fantastic environment for, mainly because of the same thing that Plaza of the Stars struggles with. But I think this year, the makeup art in this scare zone in Vanity Ball is going to be top-notch, fantastic. I feel like I'm going to want to bring my camera and just sit in that scare zone for hours and do nothing but take pictures of people pissing themselves. It's going to be fantastic. Speaking of which, I am going to be taking as many pictures and videos as possible this year. So if you want or a scare actor, hit me up, let me know. I will come take pictures of you and your performance, and I will try my hardest to find a way to take pictures of the people in the houses, because I feel you. I was in a house the last 2 years, and it's hard to get pictures of your costume, of like you actually scaring. So I'll try my best for you. But also, if you're just really interested in getting some cool HHN content, maybe you can't be there this year and you really want to, or you just love the event, follow me on my Instagram. I'm going to be posting a ton there of Halloween Horror Nights. Obviously, in the description, you'll find the link to my Instagram, but also I'll be plugging it at the end of this episode, so stay tuned to the end. It's going to be awesome. But anyways, the last scare zone, Vikings Undead. This one's going to be taking place in Central Park, which arguably is the best scare zone almost every single year, just for the vibe of that area. You turn the lights off in that area, put a ton of fog or haze, whatever, in that area. Man, that place comes to life before the scare actors even get in there. And then once they do, man, it's literally one of the best scare zones every single year. So regardless, I'm excited for this one. It says, we are all familiar with the brutal Viking warriors. It's terrifying enough thinking about facing them alive. Now, picture facing them as the undead. They have risen and laid siege to Central Park with an onslaught of gore. Bloodlust never dies. Of course, we'll talk about this one a little bit when we get into my rankings of these. I am excited for it just simply because Central Park. It's going to be so good. So good. Man, okay, really quick. I just have to say before we get into the shows and everything for this event, Trisha, right now, because like I said at the beginning of this episode, as we're recording this, the parks panel is going on, and man, my phone is blowing up. Jeez. She apparently a whole bunch of Epcot news came out. You know, they're changing the front fountain. We kind of knew. Confirmed they're updating Spaceship Earth, so that's exciting. Guardians of the Galaxy roller coaster has a reverse launch. What? She's literally just sending me snippets. So this is, wow. Okay, my mind is blowing up. There's a new China show and a new Canada show, Beauty and the Beast sing-along. These are literally, she's just sending me like literal sentence fragment text. Like, it's all just coming out right now. Princess and the Frog Resort, don't know what that means. Star Wars talk. She's sending me a ton of pictures with the Star Wars hotel. All looks really, really cool. Again, I am so excited to be able to talk about this next episode. I'm literally looking at my phone as she's sending me text after text. Jeez. Okay. Wow. Okay, yeah, we're going to talk about that next episode, guys. Stay tuned. It's literally happening right this second. And wow, okay. Stay focused. Stay on target. Okay. So back to HHN. Sorry for that interruption. We're going to have to get through this because my mind is blown. I'm going to have to reverse launch. What? Okay. My mind is blown. Reverse launch. I'm so excited for that coaster. I think Disney's starting to really try to expand to more audiences than just their current demographic. So between the Tron coaster and that, and the Guardians coaster, man. We'll talk about it next week. All right. Moving on to shows. This year, I teased it up front. We don't just have one show. We are back to 2 shows. Okay, come on. Just let your praise and your excitement just flow for a second. Start cheering, start clapping. It doesn't matter. People are going to look at you like you're crazy. But 2 shows. We haven't had this since Bill and Ted shut down. So 2 years now. Last year we only had 1 show, and we thought we were doomed, and we would only have 1 show for the foreseeable future because they tore down the Beetlejuice review, which used to be the Rocky Horror Picture Show. That was a staple of HHN for years. And then they got rid of Bill and Ted, which was a staple of HHN since the beginning. And to replace the Bill and Ted show, they took Academy of Villains, which had been already running for about two years, I believe. Yeah, they were around for 2 years, and then they moved to where Bill and Ted used to be. So the big stage that is Fear Factor Live over by Men in Black, Bill and Ted used to be in there, and then they took Bill and Ted out and put Academy of Villains in. But where Academy of Villains was playing, which is over by the Central Park area, since last year, they actually haven't had a show in that spot. So I guess in terms of shows, the big question was Academy of Villains. Is that really going to be the only show? And I guess the answer to that is no. However, it's not quite a traditional show in the sense of like a Bill and Ted or a Rocky Horror Picture Show or a Academy of Villains, but instead it is a show in the sense of the cinematic spectacular, cinematic celebration, the nighttime shows that Universal's been doing, which I think is really interesting, and honestly, I'm surprised they haven't done it sooner. But the show is called Halloween Marathon of Mayhem. It takes place on the Studio Lagoon, and the description is a monstrous new show is rising from the depths of Universal Studios Lagoon. It's a larger-than-life mixtape of retro mayhem. So basically, the show is going to mash up a whole bunch of horror icons that are in the park for this year's HHN, and I'm hoping that there's some storyline that goes through it. I'm really excited to see what they do because there were rumors about this actually coming, but nothing like really solid. So when they announced it, I was actually decently surprised. I wasn't like shocked, but I was decently surprised, if that makes sense. But I think it's good that Halloween Horror Nights now has another source of entertainment than just one show that is really cool. It does a lot, like a lot of dancing and pop culture references, which is what Bill and Ted was, and then the dancing like carries over into Academy of Villains. Now there's also another show that really does pay homage to the horror icons that this event really is based upon. But before moving on, I do want to talk about Academy of Villains. I saw last year's show several times. I still think that their first year is still probably my favorite show that they've done. Last year was very fun, a show full of energy, just like the shows that they always put on. And I'm sure that the show will be the same this year in terms of how much energy that they bring. But I felt like last year I really missed a strong storyline. One of the great things about Bill and Ted, even though it was fun and jokey and there were a whole lot of pop culture references and they were making fun of everything that's in the pop culture zeitgeist, there was still a storyline that went through from beginning to end. So it was more of an experience than just, really cool dancing or funny jokes. There was actually a story there that took you from beginning to end and that you could really get enveloped into and go on journey with these characters. And although there was a story to Academy of Villains last year, since they don't speak, I felt like the story kind of got lost in just the motion of the visuals and the dancing. And I mean, it was a really great show. I just kind of felt like one of the things that I was missing after Bill and Ted leaving was a show that actually had a storyline. I'm hoping that we'll get that both in Marathon of Mayhem, but also in Academy of Villains this year. It's called Altered States, and again, it's going to be at the Fear Factor stage. The description says, this wicked talented group of artists is back for an all-new, bigger and better performance, featuring a killer mix of dance and theatrics. And, I mean, that description isn't anything new. If you've seen Academy of Villains, that description makes sense. That's pretty much what we expect. But I really am interested to see how they've progressed. I thought the first year that they performed, there actually was a really solid storyline from beginning to end, which made me really fall in love with that show. I think the first year that they were there, they actually stole the show. They were one of the best, if not the best parts of that year. The second year, they got dealt a really bad hand because a hurricane hit Orlando right as HHN was starting. So their whole stage pretty much got demolished, and they had to start from scratch, or at least in terms of building the stage. So for a few weeks, they were literally just performing on the sidewalks, which, I mean, is insane. Like, props to them for being professional enough to be able to just own it and perform anyways, and they still gave it their all. Even though they didn't have effects, they didn't have a stage, it was just literally on the street. They still gave some killer performances. So for that alone, they have all my respect. And then they really got to make up for that the next year by finally getting put into the Fear Factor arena. And they were fantastic. But you could tell that it was a street show that was moved to an arena. It was almost like they didn't quite know what to do with the space. So it was just like, let's add more actors and dancers and kind of like flood the place with dancing, which was really cool and a lot of fun, a ton of energy. But I want to see how they can utilize the extra level of trying to figure out how to say this, like wow factor or just production value, to utilize the extra level of production value that a arena gives to a show like this. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. This is, if I'm not mistaken, unless I'm missing a year, but this is going to be their fourth year at the park, and I'm really excited to see how they've progressed. But yeah, those are the shows for Halloween Horror Nights, which means that we've officially done a full run-through of everything that's going to be there. So IPs, we got Stranger Things, Ghostbusters, Us, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, House of a Thousand Corpses, Universal Monsters. And original houses, we've got Nightingale's Blood Pit, Depths of Fear, Yeti, Terror of the Yukon, and Graveyard Games to round them out. We have 5 scare zones. Those scare zones are Zombieland Double Tapped, Rob Zombie Hellbilly Deluxe, Anarcade, Vanity Ball, and Vikings Undead. In terms of shows, we got 2 shows like we just talked about, Academy of Villains and Halloween Marathon of Mayhem. So that's the full run through. I'm super pumped, but before we close out the podcast, I put together a list of anticipated, so going from least to most. And I just wanted to run down that just really quickly, kind of give my thoughts and opinions. So let's start it off with the houses. It's the ones that I'm sure you guys are the most excited for, the most curious about, the ones that really draw the crowds. So we'll start off with the houses first. And again, I just want to disclaimer out there, don't think that I'm not looking forward to the ones at the bottom of these lists. I'm actually looking forward to every single house and every single scare zone at HHN this year. I'm more pumped for this year than I have been in a while, just because I'm not scare acting this year, so I actually get to experience the event. It's like the first year that I've been able to just go around the park as a normal person, and that's exciting for me. So I'm really excited to experience every single one of these. But, even though I am looking forward to all of these, at some point, you do have to put them in order, and at least one of them is going to end up at the bottom, So it's not that I'm not looking forward to these. It's just if I was to rank, what I'm most excited about, these are the ones that would come in last, probably. But yeah, so let's get into it with that disclaimer out of the way. Don't attack me. Don't hate me. I'm actually looking forward to all of these, so just keep that in mind. House number 10. So again, I'm starting from 10 being the least and working all the way up to my number one most anticipated house for HHN. So number 10, Nightingale. I don't know why. It's just this house, for some reason, I see it going one way or the other. Either it absolutely embraces the gory, the goriness of gladiators and that sort of thing, or it's one of those houses that fills a roster because they needed 10 houses. And I'm really excited for it either way because it's a unique and fresh concept, but because I don't really know which way or the other way they're going, it's hard to tell. I've been in two houses that they said are going to be extremely gory, and it's not that they weren't gory. They just, I don't know, when you say extremely gory, I have a certain image in my head of what gory is, and those houses weren't quite that. So Ash vs. Evil Dead in 2017, it's just a really fun house, beautiful house. And there was a lot of gory scenes because it's Evil Dead, that's the thing for Evil Dead is just the amount of gore. I played a skinless dude, for crying out loud, there's not a whole lot more gore than a dude without skin walking around. So, but it just didn't have that oh my gosh, blood, guts, So I'm interested in this house, but it depends on the direction. The next one, number 9, House of 1,000 Corpses. And I said it up top, or not up top. I said it when we discussed this house in the beginning part of the show. I'm just not a huge Rob Zombie fan. I don't know why. His stuff hasn't really connected with me in the past. I just recently rewatched the movie, gave it another shot, and it still wasn't my favorite. I'm still excited to see what they do with this house because the movie itself feels very much like a house. So I feel like they're going to do a really great adaptation of this movie because it just has that vibe already. It's just the movie wasn't my favorite. So that's going to be number 9. Number 8, Yeti. I'm really interested to see what sort of special effects they put into this house. Is the AC going to be extremely cold? Is there going to be fans blowing and fake snow? How many Yetis are there? Are they going to look like the Yetis from the Slaughter Cinema house last year? Or is it a new take on the way they look? Just what's the production level of this house? I'm really excited to see what their creative minds of Universal Halloween Horror Nights, what they think of. So that's number 8. Number 7 is Killer Clowns. Honestly, again, I'm not a huge fan of the movie. I know don't at me, but the movie's one of those, like, you have to go in prepared for a campy, fun, like cheesy horror movie, and it's great in that context. I had a lot of fun with it, but those just aren't necessarily the type of horror movies that hit me, and so for that reason, it's not like, number one or number two, but it does sit firmly, like, pretty close to the middle of the list, just because I know the passion that the HHN creative group, the people in that, the people that are creating these houses, I know how passionate they are about this property and this project. So I really, really, really want to see what they do with it. I think this house has the potential to just, be the fan favorite of the year. But I'm keeping my expectations tempered, just because I don't know. I feel like there's already quite a few houses that could go comedy, or at least not go scary. Like, I could really easily see Yeti go comedy. I could really easily see Ghostbusters go comedy. I could really easily see just a lot of these houses go, and Scare Zones too, go either the campy route or the comedy route. And my biggest hesitation with this year is that I hope that doesn't overpower the event. It's Halloween Horror Nights, and I really want that horror to be present. And I know it's going to be there. I'm not doubting them for a second. I just hope that the campiness and the comedy kind of gets restrained a little bit. But that's number 7, Killer Clowns. Number 6 is Universal Monsters. This is pretty much like right in the middle of the list, because I'm really interested to see how they adapt the classic characters. They're not doing like the new Mummy, they're not doing the new Dracula. They're doing like the old classic original ones from, I don't even know, like the 20s and 30s, I think. And that's really exciting. However, I'm curious to see how much liberty they take with this house. Like, are there going to be bits and pieces of each character, or is it going to be like a team up thing? Like, I have a lot of questions about this house, and I just can't wait to go through it. But yeah, I don't know. Universal Monsters, I'm really excited. I am so glad to see this property being reinfused into Universal's DNA. For the longest time, it seemed like the only thing we had was Monsters Cafe at Studios, because even like the Mummy ride isn't based off of the classic Mummy movie. So it's cool to see that they're really bringing the monsters back into the parks. That's awesome to see. So I'm excited for that one. Number 5. Depths of Fear. Again, this is another house that I'm so excited to see what they do visual effects wise. I know I said that earlier on in the episode, but really, between like the snow effects in Yeti and the underwater effects in Depths of Fear, and even like especially the ghost effects in Ghostbusters, I don't know. I think this year has the potential to be one of the best when it comes to the utilization of technology and special effects to really trick your brain into believing or feeling one way or the other. So Depths of Fear is number 5. Number 4, guys, I know you're expecting this to be number 1, but it's number 4, Stranger Things. Don't get me wrong, I love the TV show. I binged the TV show as soon as I could, and I think I got through it in like, one night, and then I finished it the next morning. I had like 2 episodes left or something. So like in less than a span of 24 hours, I just demolished that TV show. So good. The only reason why it's not number one is because of just the house from last year. I really enjoyed that house, and it's definitely one of the best themed houses that Universal has ever done. It just wasn't scary. And for me, I really do love the horror part of Halloween Horror Nights. And I don't want that to be something that's lost for HHN. I don't want it to just be HN, Halloween Nights. No, Halloween Horror Nights. So I really hope that Stranger Things digs into the horror a little bit more, even though this show isn't necessarily that scary. I just want maybe a little bit more than what we got last year. I'm expecting the house to be fantastic either way. It's going to be ridiculously themed and 100% immersive. You're going to feel like you're in the Stranger Things TV show. The music's going to be playing, and you're just going to be in the zone. It's going to be such a good house. And it's probably going to have the longest lines again this year, if not second longest lines. And we'll talk about that in a second. Number 3. We're getting up there. This is top 3 now. Graveyard games. Ooh. Is that shocking to some people? Graveyard games. I don't know what it is about this house, but there's something that's just classic about graveyards, right? Like, it's the thing that spooked us as kids before we had even seen horror movies. Just the thought of a graveyard, it's just a plot of land full of dead bodies and go, right? Like, that's where your mind starts, and then go. What do you come up with, right? I'm really pumped to see how creative Universal gets with this house specifically. It's just an icon of horror. It's an icon of, just even terrifying people in everyday lives. Like, I know people that still, like, hold their breaths as they drive by a graveyard. Like, it's just this icon in our culture of spookiness. And the fact that they're embracing that for a whole house this year has me really excited. So that's why Graveyard Games is number 3 in my list. But what's number 2 and what's number 1? There's only 2 houses left, but can you guess which one is which? So number 2, unfortunately for most of you, because I know you're expecting this to be number 1 if Stranger Things wasn't, number 2 is Ghostbusters. Which means you know what my number 1 is. Number 1 is Us. We'll talk about that in a second. But Ghostbusters. Why number 2? Well, for similar reasons as Stranger Things, actually. I just have this funny feeling that Ghostbusters is really going to lean into the nostalgia, which it should. But I feel like it's going to lean into the nostalgia and just the comedy campiness of Ghostbusters a little bit more than it does the horror side of things. And I know not every house has to be scary. Some houses have to appeal to a wider audience. So, it's a business. I get that. But I feel like there's already a few houses on this list that horror might not be a number 1 for that house. Like, that might not be the number 1 priority. And I'm not saying Ghostbusters has to be that. I just hope that one doesn't sacrifice the other. I hope that you can have your horror elements in it with your campiness and your nostalgia pulls, right? But why is it so high in my list if I am kind of torn on, what is this house going to be like? That's simply because I have heard so many cool things from the people I know that are inside Universal, that have been through this house, that are working on this house. I have heard so many things about how crazy realistic this technology is that I don't even know what technology it is. I just know that the way that they're actually going to show these ghosts, it's going to feel like you're in the movies. And I just can't wait for that. I think that's the best thing that Universal does. And it's kind of a shame that their normal day-to-day theme parks don't really do this anymore. But it takes you as a fan and puts you into the movies, right? Universal's thing used to be ride the movies. And I mean, it still kind of is, but it's not really about the studio aspect. But I think Universal, their whole thing is really like ride the movies. And they do that so well with Halloween Horror Nights as well. Not only are you walking through a house that is based off of a beloved movie like Ghostbusters, but you feel like you're a part of it, you know? And I can't wait to be able to see how they pull this off. I've heard people say that it's going to blow you away. And I'm hoping I don't have my hopes too high for this house. I hope that my expectations aren't through the roof. I hope that they are managed well enough, knowing that it's a temporary Halloween Horror Nights house. Are they really going to invest that much money into creating something for Ghostbusters? I don't know. But I am really curious. I don't know. Just the hype that is surrounding this house alone, and the fact that it's in... Like, I just hope that they have you walk through the old Ghostbusters queue, which is now Jimmy Fallon, and before that, it was Twister. So I hope that they just have you walk through there and be like, hey, you know, the Ghostbusters fire station, it's right there, it's still there, and we're getting to walk through it again to go to Ghostbusters. I think that's just so cool. So that's why it's number 2. Number 1, Us. Honestly, I don't have a thoughtful reason for why it's number 1. It's just out of this list, that's the one that gets my heart pounding the most. And I think it's just because I'm sitting here imagining, you know, like the red jumpsuit from the movies with the scissors, and imagining everyone in that. That's creepy. Like, I feel like this house, I feel like this movie, and I said this earlier, I feel like this movie was really designed with a house in mind. I don't know if it is or if it was or not. I would doubt that it was. But just watching the movie, it felt like, man, that could be a cool scene in a house. That could be a cool scene in the house. That could be a cool scene in the house. And the fact that it is a house now, and that it's a recent IP that's fresh in everyone's minds, it got people talking. People loved it. People were lukewarm on it. And it started a conversation. It started a dialogue. I really hope that this house does that too. I really hope that people come out of that house just talking about it. That's what Stranger Things did last year. You know, some people, well, pretty much everyone loved that house. But some people loved it for other reasons. And some people had issues with the house and for different reasons, you know. It got people talking. And I hope that Us does that this year. I am so excited for this house. It's my number 1 most anticipated house. Do I think it's going to be my favorite house? That's tough to say, because anticipated and you know, what am I? You know, what's my favorite concept or idea? I don't know. Those are 2 different things, and it just takes experience. The first thing I will do after experiencing Halloween Horror Nights, I will tell you my thoughts and opinions on all of these houses, and I will rank them from just based off my first impression, favorite to least favorite, And I will also do an update on that at the end of the run when I've been through all the houses multiple times and I'm able to collect my thoughts fully. I'm so excited. Do I think Us is going to be my favorite house coming out of this? Honestly, probably not. But the only reason why I say that is because Universal has a track record of blowing me away with the houses that I least expected. Scarecrow, I didn't expect much out of that. Seeds of Extinction last year, wow, I did not expect much from that. I remember sitting in the orientation class. I don't think that house had even been announced to the public yet. And they said that they were doing a house that was basically like plants overtaking the planet. And I laughed and said, really? Like, I don't know. It sounds like a stupid concept. But walking through that house blew my mind at how genius that house was. The concept could have so easily fallen apart in execution. But they saw it all the way from this concept that could be taken in a very cheesy way, and instead they made it into a very realistic, like gritty, scary house. And I found myself going through that house more than almost any other house. The only other house that I enjoyed more was Carnival Graveyard. And that's not because it's a better house. I actually think Seeds of Extinction was probably the better house. But because when I went through Giggles and Gore, that was how many years ago? That's what I almost said. When I went through Carnival Graveyard, I had such a unique experience with some of the scare actors there that I won't forget. And the fact that there were references to like dueling dragons in there, yes, please. That's like one of my favorite rides, and I'm still heartbroken that it's gone. Hagrid's is great. Don't get me wrong. It's a fun ride. But, man, Dueling Dragons, it has a special place in my heart. And the fact that that had a reference in that house, that house was just so good. And honestly, there was so much hype around Exorcism last year that I went through there with my expectations through the roof, and I walked out actually very let down. It was a good house, but was it the house that everyone was freaking out about? I don't think so. Still a good house, though. Still a good house. I actually have some really good friends that were in all of those houses. I think last year I had a good friend in at least one in all the houses. And I'm excited for this year because, again, I have friends in every single house, and a few of them have already told me, yo, watch your back when you're coming through the house, because if I see you, you're going down. And I'm both terrified and so excited. I remember last year, I basically got tackled when I went through my house. Towards the end of the run, I had a night off, which doesn't really happen much for scare actors, so I decided to go through the park and experience it as a guest. And I finally made it through my house, Blumhouse, and man, as soon as the scare actors recognized that it was me, it was like game over. I literally got dragged into the back of the house, and like there's normal guests all around. Like they don't know that I work there. They just know that they saw a normal guest get dragged, like tackled and dragged behind the curtains into the back of the house, screaming, and they're like, oh my God, like what is happening? It was one of the best experiences of my life. I literally had to fight my way out of that house because everyone was just like, get this guy. And the look on the faces of the normal guest in front of me and behind me, priceless. So I'm excited, but I'm also terrified. So if any of you guys are listening to this episode, you know me and you're an actor, just don't hit me in the face. I don't bruise my face, please. But fair game otherwise, do your worst. Just it's the moneymaker, okay? Not really. Just be careful. Anyways, so that's the list of houses. Really quick, we're going to go through scare zones. There's only 5 of them. So let's talk least to most. Again, same disclaimer up top as the houses. I'm actually looking forward to all of these, but unfortunately, one has to come in last place. So don't at me. Don't get pissed off. This is just how it's listed out. So at number 5, Vikings Undead. Kind of the same reason for Nightingales. It could go one way or the other. It could go super gory, or it could go super campy, super fast. And it just depends on which way they go, whether I really enjoy it or not. The great thing about scare zones, though, is that if the makeup and the masks and just the prosthetics and everything are done right, that brings the scare zone to life so much more. Because unlike a house where, in a house you're just getting shoved through, there's not really any time that you can sit and enjoy it, what it is for what it is. Like you're just kind of pushed through and you only get glimpses at things. At scare zones, you can really take as much time as you want to walk through that scare zone, to take a look at the scare actors and really appreciate the costuming and the makeup and really get a feel for the environment. So if the costumes and the makeup are on point and they go a little bit more towards the gory side of things, I think this scare zone could be amazing. But I'm kind of left... I have a few questions, and if the questions get answered one way or the other, that's really, I think, it all hinges on that. Number 4, Rob Zombie, Hellbilly Deluxe. Now, the reason why, again, same as House of a Thousand Corpses, Rob Zombie just isn't my favorite. I don't know. His music has never really connected with me, and because of that, I never really got into him. I've heard, just his top hits, I guess, and I just haven't really dove into his music enough to be excited about this scare zone. I am very interested to see what happens because, like I said earlier, Universal has a good track record with working with other creatives and putting something together that's very memorable. And I'm honestly kind of hoping that this is a spiritual successor to Vamp 85. Vamp 85 last year was really cool and owned that like punk, rock, metal, 80s vibe. And I wonder if Hellbilly Deluxe is going to kind of carry that over. If it does, I think I'll really enjoy it. But it just really depends. Number 3, top 3 here out of the 5. Vanity Ball. Again, like I said earlier, I'm excited for this one just for the talented makeup artists that Universal has. I'm so excited to see the sort of stuff that they come up with, and I can't wait to be able to just admire their artwork. It's going to be a creepy and beautiful, all at the same time, scare zone. It's going to be one of those things that, like, you're like, wow, that's so, like, creepy and yet, like, artistic and, like, beautiful, and I don't know how I feel about this. Like, I feel like that's going to be the scare zone, and I'm excited. Number 2, Anarcade. I actually struggled to put this number 1 or number 2. The top 2 flip-flopped a lot. Again, I think this might be the year that the Main Street, Avenue of the Stars, really finds its own. That scare zone has really struggled the last few 29 years now to feel as involved and enveloped as the other scare zones. And I think this year might be the year that changes. Just because if we're going 80s themed again, what's more 80s than an old dingy arcade, right? Like, that is nostalgia right there. That's, people are going to, I'm excited for the vibe of that scare zone. I think that's the one that really has the chance to knock it out of the park. And I think it's the sleeper, honestly. Pretty much everyone that I've heard talk about this says that it's one of their least anticipated, but I think don't sleep on it. I think it's going to blow more people away than you expect. But of course, rounding it out, number one, Zombieland. And the only reason why this is number one is because of how animated, and let me explain this, but how animated the film is. And I don't mean like hand-drawn animated. I mean like there's such a stylized, borderline cartoony feel of the original, yet it's still very like, I want to say grounded and not realistic, but like it has a real world, like, man, I buy this as a zombie apocalypse kind of vibe to it, but yet it's lighthearted, it's funny, the characters just speak to you, like you connect with the characters. Hilarious. And okay, I just want to say this is two Bill Murray properties right next to each other. We got Zombieland, and then right next door we got Ghostbusters. I'm just saying, like, we got to get some Bill Murray in here. Although Zombieland is double tapped, which is the sequel, Bill Murray is most likely not in it. If you haven't seen the first one, for very obvious reasons, he's probably not in it. Anyways, yeah, I mean, just why wouldn't Zombieland be your top one? Like, everyone went insane when they announced this one. I think it's going to be probably the best one just for how much fun it's going to be. It's going to be lighthearted, but yet terrifying at the same time. I can't wait to see Kill of the Week up on, like, the big screen. They already have it set up. I haven't seen it in person yet. I've seen a few photos. But I just think, like how Vamp 85 was a show last year, it wasn't, like, it was a scare zone, sure, but it was a show. I think Zombieland is going to be the same thing. Yeah, it's a scare zone, but it's a show, and they put it on every night. I'm excited. So that is my, breakdown, run through everything HHN29, and I even listed everything from least anticipated to most anticipated. Guys, I want to know your thoughts, okay? So for those of you listening to the podcast, follow me on all my social media. It's in the show notes. I'll go over that in just a second. But if you are on YouTube, I actually upload these videos on YouTube, just as, our graphic, and I put some videos in to overlay just here and there to, kind of show you a visual of what we're talking about. But if you're watching on YouTube, get a conversation going in the comments. I really want to know what you guys think of this year's event. What are you looking forward to most? What are you looking forward to the least? What do you think is going to be the best? What do you think is not going to be the best? I really want to know your guys' thoughts and opinions. Are you going? How many nights are you going? Do you have a pass? Guys, just get a conversation going. I want to know these things. But if you're listening to the podcast and you're like, you can't comment on Apple Podcasts, bro. Well, that's true. You can rate us, though. It actually really does help out the podcast. It gets that out there. But you can follow me on social media. Like I said up front, I'm going to be posting a ton of pictures of everything HHN. I'm going to make some a video of it all too. I'm going to be posting reviews and my thoughts and opinions, and you're just going to get a lot of HHN content. So please head on over to my social media and start a conversation there. Like, let's get some comments going. I'll be making some posts, of course, But the best platform to do that on is Instagram at John Holt 96. Again, that's in the show notes. Or if you're on YouTube, that's in the description. So be sure to check that out. You can also follow my personal page on YouTube, my personal channel on YouTube. It's just at Jonathan Holt. There I talk a lot about filmmaking and photography. And so if that's the stuff that you are interested in, passionate about, or want to learn more about, go ahead and check that out. Subscribe there. I post a lot of stuff about, like, a lot of tutorials, but I also do some vlogging and that sort of thing. So, guys, thank you so much for sticking with me. Man, this is an hour-and-a-half long podcast. What the heck? Jeez, I need to learn how to shut up. I'm passionate about HHN29. What can I say? I'm excited. I'm pumped. You guys should be too. Thank you guys so much for sticking out this podcast, listening, and hopefully enjoying. If you did enjoy, like I said, please rate the podcast. Give us a review. I would love to hear your reviews and thoughts of the show. Also, subscribe on YouTube and all that. Just, at Theme Park Center. That would be great. Comment, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I appreciate every single one of you for listening. And be sure to tune in constantly because we have some awesome stuff coming up. As soon as, my phone is blowing up with all this stuff from D23 that Trisha is sending me. And it seems like we have a lot of stuff to be talking about next week. So when she's back, we're going to be talking about all things D23. It's something you don't want to miss. It's source, like from the source itself. She was there. She saw it all in person. So we're going to get her thoughts and opinions and her experience and everything. And then, of course, the week after that is when HHN actually opens. So be sure to tune in for our review of that, what we thought of the event. And I believe on YouTube as well, I'm going to do my best. I don't know what necessarily the policies are about filming stuff during a preview because it technically still is a rehearsal preview. But if I can vlog for the employee preview, I totally will. So be sure to check that out. So subscribe to my channel and this Theme Park Center channel on YouTube. But really, that's what we got coming up, guys. Exciting stuff. Be sure to tune in. But until then, thank you guys so much for listening/watching. My name is Jonathan Holt. Take it easy and have a good one. Peace.